Hey friends, welcome back to Axial GT. Today we're looking at Mortal Shell, the admitted Souls-like game that was released on August 18th of 2020 on PS4, Xbox One, and PC. As of note on PC, it is a timed exclusive for the Epic Games Store. And yeah, I know, Epic Games Store does suck, and its consumer-friendly offerings are extremely inadequate, but I'm not including that sort of shortcoming in this review. But before we dive in, consider subscribing and turning on notifications to be notified when I upload. I do a mix of gaming news, reviews, with a few commentary videos sprinkled in. With that out of the way, let's get started. So as I said in the intro of Mortal Shell devs admit they drew inspiration from the Souls games. So I'll say off the bat, if you don't like the gameplay and combat of Dark Souls or Demon Souls, Mortal Shell may not be for you. But if you did enjoy those games, man, let me tell you. First I will say this isn't a copy and paste of Dark Souls. Let's call it a Dark Souls Mini, or maybe even a Dark Souls Lite. As those games took around 40 to 50 hours to complete, Mortal Shell is less than half of that when it comes to completion time. It took me about 17 hours to complete, and I admit I was a little rusty at the start. It's been a while since I played a Dark Souls game, but once I got into my groove, my initial frustration turned into me rocking with this game. Now my frustration wasn't the game's fault. That was just me. Now I will say even during my frustrated beginnings, I was impressed on what the small indie studio was able to create. Cold Symmetry has about 15 full-time developers, and they paid great homage to the game that they were aspiring to be. But it does set itself far enough apart to be its own thing. You start off the game as, let's say, a moist individual, and Mortal Shell forgoes the traditional class systems in other action RPGs, and goes a route of 4 differing shells you can inhabit, each with their own abilities and attributes. First you have Harrows, the balanced shell, equal amounts of durability and health. Then there's Solomon, with a little greater health. And while I tried all these shells, this is the one I stuck with through most of my subsequent game playthroughs. Next is Eredrum. This here is your hard-hitting tank of sorts. He can take a lot of punishment at the expense of lack of dodge ability. And lastly, Teal, a slightly different shell. He is based on speed and mobility. Now when we talk about combat in Mortal Shell, you will die, and possibly die a lot. Everything from the lowly villager to bosses, and even poisonous frogs will kill you. But just remember, this game is all about timing, and Mortal Shell has a second chance mechanic built in. If you are knocked out of your shell, you can become your original moist self, and one hit can kill you. But if you can get back into your shell, you'll be able to get back into the action with another full bar of health and stamina. Another key aspect of combat is hardening. This is an innovative combat mechanic, and I cannot stress enough learning how to use it wisely is of the utmost importance. It takes the place of block in other RPGs, and it is essential. You can even use it mid-attack to absorb a blow and counter one of your own. Now Teal's version of Harden is to downright disappear, but the same premise is involved. Now there are only 4 different weapons to choose from in the game, well I guess 5 if you count the shoulder mounted crossbow, but I didn't really miss my lack of choice, as I kinda gravitated toward one weapon of choice and just stuck with it. Visually, I really like the art style. The dark fantasy setting really comes to life, and you can totally immerse yourself in the atmosphere and ambiance. The few voice acted characters there are done extremely well, and are believable.
Rather dashing in that curious attire. And what of on the inside? You must be a gentleman.
And now as far as the story, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but I found it interesting and immersive, but it can be subtle at times, meaning you may miss some if you're not paying attention. Well, now that I've talked about the good, what about the bad? Remember when I was talking about voice acting and sound of the game? Well, I was wishing I could have added more to that by talking about the music, or soundtrack, but alas I could not do that. Mortal Shell doesn't really have a soundtrack. Okay, it has one, but it's so subtle it may as well not have one. But that may just be a personal preference. But as for bugs, yes, I experienced a few. Number 1, on occasion my hardening combat mechanic would stop working, and it's really frustrating when it's so heavily relied upon during combat. The only way to fix this was to take my beating, and when I went back to the checkpoint, it started working again. Now I did also get stuck in the occasional wall or environment, and again had to restart my experience, losing what progress I felt I had made. And for my test system, I was running a Ryzen 7 3700X with 32GB of memory and a 1080 Ti hybrid. With that, I was running 1440p on ultra settings, around 90 to 110 FPS, with some dips going down to the 80 FPS range, depending on what was going on the screen. So in summary, yes, I guess you can say I really enjoyed my time with Mortal Shell. Everything added together collectively, the art style, the combat, the story, and just the overall feel of the game, yes, I would recommend this for others to play. I believe Cold Symmetry really created a winner here, and this is a $30 title, so its value definitely outweighs its shortcomings. As for scoring the game, I really don't like scores, but to some they are instrumental. I'd give Mortal Shell a 7.5 out of 10. Cold Symmetry set out to pay homage to the Dark Souls-like genre, and in that they do accomplish that goal. With a good narrative, art design, and an interesting level design, I would recommend this game to anyone who loved other games in this space. But that's it. That's my review of Mortal Shell. Tell me what you think in the comments below. I read all of them. And if you enjoyed the video and found it informative, smash that like button and consider subscribing to Axial GT for more game news and reviews. But until next time, my friends, I'm out of here. You all have a good one.